Woah. Woah never changes. I thought I would talk about Fallout 4's design and mechanics. It's a good way to support my Concrete Play series, and it's both fun and popular right now, so it's a good teaching tool. I'll try and give a good accounting for all of my opinions, but I probably will disagree with you on some things. It's usually because we have different play experiences, so feel free to talk about it below if you have something that you think differently about. Now, in case you've never played the game, basically, you rather rapidly get this massive area to build in, and then as the game goes on, you get more and more little ones for you to expand into. But basically, you can build whatever you need to do. So you've got all of these options here, or you can build an armory stand if you have enough resource. If you have enough skill and resources, you can build beds and furniture and whatever you need to do, and it's very free. But it's also got a lot of gotchas. And I'm going to talk about the gotchas since the reason this is so small is because I have restarted a few times. Right now it only has 7 people. It's got food, water, and beds for 12. It's got lots of defense and some power. It's actually got 8 power. I just turned off one of the generators. I just got some happiness. So right now I'm kind of waiting for more people to show up. But while I'm doing that, I'm going to tell you why I had to restart. So in the very first time I played this, I went and bought the most expensive water purifier, which has to go in the water. So I stuck it down here in the river. And it was hugely expensive, or over there in the river, wherever. It was hugely expensive, and I saved up because I didn't ever want to have to pay for water again. I didn't, I kept running out of water, and I was like, well, screw it, I'll just build a huge water purifier. To my dismay, I realized later that your attackers attack based on your food and water resources. So if your defense is lower than your food and your water, you get attacked. And maybe you get attacked a couple of times without that as well, but you need to make sure that you've got enough defense to cover the food and the water you've got. So when my water jumped from 6 to 46, and my defense went from 12 to 14, I got my ass attacked. Another problem I found out is that the way that the attackers work doesn't really make any sense. They just kind of teleport in out of nowhere and randomly damage stuff. So they damaged my water purifier right off the bat, and it was so expensive to repair that it would have been cheaper to build more water resources from scratch. But more than that, the way that they attacked led me to believe that I had built my facilities completely wrong. I had built a special structure right here, a 2-story structure with all of my generators on top of it and stuff, because I thought that would be safe. If they're on top and they've got walls around them, you can't damage them unless you go upstairs and then upstairs and then upstairs. It turns out that that's not the case. What happens is the stuff gets damaged at random, and the enemies spawn in wherever the hell they want. So all of the enemies spawned in right in the center of my highly defended 2-story building. So basically I was like, oh, screw that. If that's how it works, then obviously I need to change my attitude and completely do it again from scratch. So that's what brought me here. I'm using the default houses because I'm hoping they don't spawn inside them, but even if they do, these have more holes in them and I won't have any problem getting around back. But if you have more experience with the base building and you know more about the system, you can feel free to talk about that. Basically, I was a little bit annoyed that it appears that the enemies just teleport in randomly. I would have loved to see some kind of simulation, kind of a tower defense sort of thing going on, but it doesn't happen. The actual bases themselves are really badly balanced, and I'm not sure if this is going to be patched, but it's definitely going to be modded. So just as an example, water, like I talked about earlier. There are 3 water resources: the water pump, the water purifier, and the huge water purifier. This is the one I built and then got damaged. I don't have the science rank right now, so I can't show it to you, but it's basically a huge thing. Notice that this costs a fair amount of resources, but more importantly, it costs 5 power. Similarly, this costs 2 power. This, on the other hand, doesn't cost power at all. It also costs less resources. It does cost gears, and you don't really run across gears that often in the wild, but there are lots of perks that can give you gears, and you can buy gears from traveling merchants, so they're not really that rare. What this means is that there's never any reason to not put in hand pumps. These other 2 options both require power, and they're both more expensive. So why would you ever use them? It makes far more sense to just put in huge numbers of water pumps, and if they're damaged or destroyed, you just stick more of them down. Same basic problem exists in a lot of different ways. None of the stuff is terribly well balanced, and it's very confusing sometimes to try and get people to work on the things you want them to work on, but still, the amount of freedom it gives you is immense and fun. There's a lot of joy to be found in customizing your base, especially since every facility you have has its own core buildings that can't be modified. Now, this game also has a lot of features under the hood that it doesn't really tell you about on your first go, and in fact, it really has a very bad tutorial when it comes to that sort of thing. For example, they'll tell you, oh, good, now that you've planted food, assign someone to it. They don't tell you how to do that. It turns out that you have to be in build mode and clicking on people to do that. But here's the second base you'll generally get. Okay. So this base, if I hold down V, I can see the stats. Notice there's nothing here. That's because I haven't put any people here. And for the longest time I was like, well, how would I ever put people there? Would it be like I would have to build a recruitment tower and build like a lot of resources just to get the recruitment tower up, since they require power and stuff? And the answer is that you can do a lot more than you're led to believe. So, for example, I will go back over here and talk to people while in build mode. Now, the reason that I was so confused by this is because you have different options when you're talking to a named NPC. So, for example, if I were to target Preston here, I don't have any options. He can't be assigned, he can't be moved, he can't be anything. But if I were to talk to one of the generic NPCs, command, move, supply line. So you've got a ton of options here. You can move them to a different place. You can have them set up a supply line to a different place, or you can tell them what to do. And all of those options are extremely powerful and allow you to do a lot of really cool things. But at the same time, they also really limit you. So to show you that, let's open up the perk menu. So the perk menu has a number of perks that you're going to desperately want. Now, some of them you're going to desperately want for completionists' sake, and some of them you're going to desperately want because, well, it's obvious that you'll need them. The one that you're going to need most is probably the level 6 perk in Charisma, Local Leader. Without Local Leader, you'll have to manually run all of your resources from facility to facility because you won't be able to build anything in Facility A because Facility B has all the resources. With Local Leader, you can run a supply line. So you're going to want a Charisma of 6, and that's a big limiting factor right there. Already, you've made it so that it's going to be a pain in the ass to have a character with a Charisma of 6, of less than 6. Which is a shame, I guess. I wish that there were more than one way to run supply lines. Like Local Leader would let you do it in a cheap way, maybe. Similarly, they have switched out the Locksmith and the Hacker skills, which used to be, you know, numbered 0 to 255, and now are just attributes you get. But basically, they've replaced them with the Skyrim method, which is you have basic, advanced, and stuff, and you can't. If your skill isn't high enough, you can't even try them. And the reason they did that is because the mini games are so primitive that you can beat the hardest challenge without any difficulty. So they've upped the challenge by faking it, and they just put up barriers so you can't get the next level. So if you wanted to do locks, you'll need to have a perception of 4, and if you wanted to do hacking, you'll need to have an intelligence of 4. Hacking is very important so far, so I can't imagine having a character with less than 6 charisma or less than 4 intelligence. So because of the way that their trait engine is set up and the way that their bases are set up, they're really forcing you into specific character paths, or you're going to have like a challenge mode. If you decide you're not going to take those, if you're going to have like an intelligence of 1, then you're going to have quite a challenge in getting your system to work. Similarly, the only real reason to have a super high level in a stat is if you think that the perks at the high level are valuable. But unfortunately, They're not. The Intelligence 10 perk, worthless. The Intelligence 9 perk, largely worthless unless you plan to go for a power armor route. The level 8, basically worthless. It's very rare that you'll run into a robot that you have the opportunity to hack and where you're in enough danger that it matters. And that's the same with all of these. For charisma, you can intimidate people, but it's easier to shoot them and you don't have any penalty to do so. And they have to be lower than your level. Same with the monsters. So it's not like you'll be able to intimidate a Deathclaw. You'll only be able to drive away rad scorpions or whatever. All of these are pretty primitive. So there's very, very rare. There's no reason to max out your stats. And that means that most characters are probably going to be built with a kind of middling stats, where you'll have a couple of dump stats and then everything else will be kind of good-ish. Which basically means that all the characters are going to be the same, right? I mean, depending on whether or not you'd prefer to go for a strength endurance run, I guess, but I don't think anyone will try that for their first run. Melee weapons in a game which is so gun-centric is obviously a challenge mode. So if you guys have run with a character substantially different than this, let me know. If you have found that there is a big use for luck or endurance or strength when you're doing a typical run, let me know. But because of the way that everything is built, so far as I can see, the only difference between my character and your character might be that one of my stats and perception have been swapped. Like you'll have a 4 agility or something. Still, I can't help but think that the game was not designed very well in terms of how balanced it is. And normally I talk about games like this, I think, you don't need to worry too much about balance in an open world game. And I'm starting to think maybe I was wrong. You don't have to worry about balance in an open world game when you're talking about balance versus the world. But you do have to worry about balance versus yourself. You need to allow for every kind of character and every kind of player to have a good time. And if you've structured your perks and your bases and your main gameplay mode such that you cannot play certain kinds of characters reasonably, then you have screwed up. If you want your character, if players want to run a challenge mode, they'll assign themselves too few stat points. Go through the game with all ones. That would be quite a fun challenge. But a player should not consider it a challenge mode to go through the game with the character they want to play. If I wanted to play a big dumb bruiser, that should be something that is allowed without totally punishing me and forcing me to ferry 10,000 pieces of steel between various places. I don't want to sound like I'm down on this game. Although it has some serious balance problems, those can probably be modded into fixed with a mod. And if they can't be fixed with a mod, I'd be real stunned, because there are already mods out there that do a lot of things, and it's only been 2 days. The core idea of building a base is fantastic, and the freedom it offers you is great, and the power lines are really cool. The way that power lines work is awesome. I'm really enjoying that aspect a lot more than I thought I would. They have a lot of stuff in here that I think is useless, but it's really nice. For example, they've got pressure plates, laser tripwires, delayed off switches, delayed on switches, interval switches, power counters. You've got all this stuff, and that's only half of it. You've got tons and tons of stuff, and it can all be used to build a lot of complicated things. But unfortunately, because of the way that the enemies are simulated, there doesn't appear to be any reason to build any traps or anything like that. The only thing you really need to worry about is whether or not your turrets can hit them in whatever building they decide to randomly spawn in. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I'm going to go play some more. Next time maybe I'll talk about the VATS versus the real-time gunplay, which is another interesting discussion.